Welcome to Wine Country in Short. I'm Ralph DeAmicis. This is another segment we're doing about the Mira Winery just south of Yountville in the Napa Valley.
Officially, there's two of us in production. So we have a very small team in general, and we all end up doing a little bit of everything. Of course, not everybody can be the winemaker, so, I get to keep that title. But yeah, and on the production side, there's just two of us, and we've actually worked together for almost 20 years. So in my previous life for Robert Mondavi, when I was the winemaker responsible for all the reds, and my assistant winemaker here, Jesus, he was the cellar master. So we were kind of the team, the quarterback and the wide receiver situation, or the pitcher and the catcher, whatever your preference is in sports. And we just worked really, really well together. We have a lot of things that we like in common. And one of the main things that we have in common that we like is making world-class wine. I think that's something that when we worked at Robert Mondavi, under the Mondavi family, we really picked up on that, and he's got that same goal here, is that we want to make the best, be among the best winemakers in the world here. So it's great to have somebody like that on the team, and that, you can leave and not have to worry about things not being done correctly, because what you're thinking, he's already doing, and vice versa. Yeah. And I would say, Napa is, after having worked in different parts of the world, Napa is such a unique place to make excellent wine. And, it's like you just described, you don't necessarily have to do much, especially here, to make a really great wine. But if you want to take it to that next level where it's got that, there's something about this wine, but I don't know what it is type thing that you keep going back to, it takes a little bit more than just what nature gives you. You have to have people that are passionate about what they're doing to put that into the wine too, that passion.
Genius is in the details.
That's right. The genius is in the details.
Now, where is Jesus from?
Jesus is from Guadalajara, Mexico, but he's been in the valley, probably longer than he lived in Mexico. So he's been in the wine industry for quite a long time, and he's also very much involved with the local kids. He's a soccer trainer outside of work. His other passion is soccer, and he's very involved with the community as well, which is great. I think one of his relatives was in Napa, and he came in, and they offered him a job. And like a lot of people, you didn't know that you were going to love being in wine. And he found that he was really good at what he does, and he really enjoyed what he does as well. And it's interesting because we kind of went parallel paths. I started in the lab at Robert Mondavi, and he started in the cellar. And we both were about the same age, and he started a year before I did at Mondavi. And we just kind of both kept rising at the same time, but in different departments, which was really, really great. And like I said, Bear, we're just kind of like me and Jesus in the cellar. Bear's like that with me on the communications and stuff like that. A lot of stuff that I'm thinking he's already writing about, or we tend to always have the same opinion about just about everything. It's just I've always loved art. I've always loved art. One of my brothers is an architect, and I just remember looking through his magazines and books on world buildings, and through that you start discovering methods of building and things that are hidden in with some of these really ancient buildings. And one of them was the golden ratio, and just looking some of the classical architecture out there, the Acropolis in Athens and things like that, and then the artwork from Leonardo that incorporates some of this golden ratio Fibonacci sequence. It's just amazing. And so the more I read about it, the more I was hooked on it, and the more interested I was in it, and just seeing how it is in nature all around us. The galaxy we're in being a spiral galaxy, and how certain plants and crops grow as well. And according to these numbers, the 5-petaled flowers that are pretty common, 8-petaled flowers, and it's just all around us, and it's amazing to me. And then just later down the road, my family, we're from Sacramento. We grew up around agriculture, and my dad worked at a cannery in Sacramento where he canned peaches and tomato, and we made ketchup and tomato sauce, tomato paste for the big names and whatnot. And I just remember the summers, just this level of activity around harvest of those fruits, and going with my dad to the fields to check on stuff and tomatoes or peaches up in the Marysville area to bring to the cannery. It was just, when I was going to college and thinking about the things that I really enjoyed earlier in life, that was it. And I'm thinking, how can I incorporate all this stuff into a career? And then I realized And at that same time, I was getting into wine, right? And I was looking at labels and I was understanding what it meant, what's inside, what the label's telling you about what's inside. And it's like, wine is kind of time traveling in a lot of ways. And it's travel in time, but it's also travel to a place. And I was just fascinated by it. And so as I was about to graduate from college, my friend, a really good friend of mine, we used to work at a water slide park together. He was going to UC Davis, and we kind of got together into a little wine tasting group. And I'll never forget, because we had the state fair where the water slide park is in Sacramento. And one of us would go down into the beer and wine garden, spend $50, which was a lot, when you were making $4 an hour back then, sneak it into the backpack and bring it into the money counting room. And we taste this wine while we were eating, right? And that wine was the poet, one of the one where I really started engaging with the idea of I want to be in the wine industry somehow. And in reading the back label of a Robert Mondavi wine from the 80s, the famous one that talks about wine has been with us since the beginning of civilization, and it's the drink of poets and artists and all this stuff, and part of the gracious way of life. I'm like, that sounds magnificent to me. How do I sign up? And so my friend says, well, you can get a degree in beer making, winemaking at UC Davis. I'm like, I had no idea that you could actually go to school for this. So I pursued that. And then more important than that, I pursued getting a job at Robert Mondavi, and I got hired on in the lab originally as a harvest lab tech. And that's when I knew that I loved it. My job was going to the different locations in Napa to sample fermenting tanks and barrels and check for sugar levels, and temperature, and set up the samples for tasting for the winemaker. And that's when I knew this is it for me. I love doing this. And I'll never forget the look. I started Labor Day of 95. And I'll never forget coming home, because I was living with my parents in Sacramento, with a bucket and styrofoam cups and lids and a Sharpie and a rubber hose and a lab coat. And so they were all at the state fair. Labor Day back then was the last day of the state fair. And so I got home, I worked from 6 to 2:30, got home, went directly to sleep to take a nap. And when my parents came home, I was like, is this what we sent you to school for? And I'm like, trust me, Mom, it's going to work out. It's going to be great. Well, I mean, that's part of the fun of being the winemaker is you get to be very creative in your approach to making the wine. And even though we all use barrels and stuff like that, or we all harvest grapes and we put them in tanks, at that point, it becomes kind of your baby, right? Up until that point, it's nature that's kind of telling you what to do, or you're going to do, the grapes are looking like this, or you're going to do that, right? And once you get the stuff into the winery, it's all very intentional. Everything that we do once the grapes are in, how we process them, the barrels that I select for the different wines, and I try to match barrels to wines. I try to get complexity, because most of the stuff that I've been doing has been single vineyard, single varietal. And so in keeping everything separate and in trying to make the best possible representation of that wine that year from those grapes and that vineyard, there's all these other factors that are giving you creative license, but helping you to maybe elevate that wine to something that it wouldn't have been otherwise. If you used all the same barrels, the wine still would be great, but maybe wouldn't have the soul that it does because you use 7 different barrels or 8 different barrels. It's like you said when I first walked in, to say good morning to you is when you've been doing something for so long, it's a big plus, but it can also be a little bit of a danger, because you might get used to doing things the same way. But the way that you really get to know something, or just like a person, is being with them for so long, and working with the same vines for years and years and years, and seeing, different things that happen different years, allows you to have that relationship where you can really bring out what's in that vineyard.